Welcome to On the Ledge podcast. I'm your host, Jane Perrone, and this week we're talking about goo. I just love saying that word. It makes me so happy. Specifically, the goo that goes in terrariums to make a wonderful landscape for your plants. And in this podcast, we'll be talking specifically about begonias in terrariums. And I'm joined by two wonderful guests in the form of the Begonia Ladies. That's Ash and Nina. And they specialize in begonias for terrariums and also substrates for those plants and environments. So I think you're really going to enjoy this week's show. Just before we get into that, a couple of pieces of housekeeping. Thanks to everyone who enjoyed the terrarium time machine episode last week. Had lots of lovely feedback. I had a message from Sarah, the plant rescuer, saying more terrarium time machine, please. So yes, I think I might have to take the terrarium time machine for another spin. Not quite sure where yet, so let me know if you've got thoughts on that. And just to be clear, I referenced German and Bobby in the podcast and asked them to shut the door. They are real listeners, and I got a message from German saying that how much he enjoyed the show and thanking me for taking him along on my botanical time travels. So yeah, maybe you'd like to come along next time. What do you think? Also on Patreon, lots of new Patreon subscribers this week. We've got Colleen, who's a crazy plant person. Roxanne and Kelly became free members, and Anne and Matt became legends on my free trial, and Doreen became a super fan. It's great to have you on board, and if you're interested in my Patreon to unlock exclusive content and also add free episodes, check out patreon.com/on the ledge. Right, without any further ado, let's get into the chat with Ash and Nina. The goo is go. Nina and Ash, welcome to On the Ledge podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. I think we should probably start with a little tale of how you got into this wonderful hobby of being obsessed with indoor plants and begonias specifically and goo. How did this all begin? Are we talking about a lockdown fascination or a lifelong obsession with houseplants? How did you get here? Is my question today. If you can remember.
So I lived in a flat for 13 years before we moved and bought our first house 3 months before lockdown. So just pure coincidence that it happened during lockdown. But I always wanted to have my own garden once we bought a house. So that was the first thing we did. Outdoor gardening is pretty much what I started with. Then succulents. I have cats, so you have to obviously be quite careful about what sort of plants you've got. But it turns out they weren't really that bothered, so I could sort of branch out a little bit more. And like everybody, started with your aroids, so lots of philodendrons seemed to be the thing that I was interested in. So you can see there's still a few hanging around, not many. And then I discovered begonias and growing from seed, and that's pretty much the end of that story. And that's pretty much all I do now.
And what about you, Ash?
For me, a little bit of a different journey. So I moved out home. I had a peace lily, and I had a peace lily. I'm not saying it was the same one, but a peace lily for probably the next decade. And that was it. Then I had a pretty life-changing health diagnosis, and plants became something that gave me a reason to get up and gave me some motivation and some, to be honest, psychological reward as well of nourishing something, seeing it grow. And I started out, as lots of us do, with aroids, and my hoard grew. And it got to a point where I couldn't cope anymore, and all the rewards that were coming from it were fizzling away in the face of having to get up and water 300 plants every morning. I hopefully other people can relate to that. I don't think I'm the only one. But from there, I started moving into terrariums, and I was like, I don't have to water them. This is amazing. I can just enjoy my plants and I can be creative. And that's where the goo comes from as well. And we'll probably get more into the details of how I came to that, but really it was from a point of wanting to manage my tendency to go, oh, that's pretty, I need one in my house, in a more effective way.
That's very relatable. I think and lots of people start with aroids. I don't really know why aroids. I say this, I sound like such an old fart, like aroids. Why people are so into aroids? But it is such a common starting point. But you've obviously found your true love in a slightly different direction in the form of terrariums, and obviously begonias feature heavily in that. What is it that you both love about begonias, starting with you,
Definitely
Nina?
is different for both of us for sure. For me, it's texture. I love the hairy ones and the ones with the funny shaped leaves. My favorite type of begonia is Yamor. They have like cloud shaped leaves. They're really kind of puffy, and they just have really different shapes about them. I also like any of the ones with sort of different colors as well. Yes, it's the leaf shape more than anything for me, to be honest. The flowers are pretty too, but the stylistic way that there's such a variety as well to choose from is what draws me to them.
And Ash?
So I was going to say, yo-yo moors are beautiful
They
though.
are.
They are, and fluffy, frilly,
You can't actually see them. They're over
gorgeousness that
there. I might have to go and grab one in a minute.
you do have to crunch
Yeah.
them off.
What is it? Tell me the name. I'm not catching the name of
Well,
this.
that's because for most begonias, there are no names. There are so many unidentified species that they either are numbered or they're just called noids. So for most of our collections,
Oh, it's
they don't have a name, to be honest.
It's going to be
Mm.
SP and then the location where they're
Yes.
found. For example, there's at least that I can think of 12 distinct SP Kalimantan.
Yes.
It's just a location where they were found originally. So the one we're talking about that Nina loves is Yamor. It's from Papau, the island of Papau. And that's just a location where begonias of that particular type grow, but there's lots of variety within that. If you look at two different SP Yamor, they're very likely not the same, but they're unclassified. They're not, we can't say they're two distinct species. They've not been recorded yet.
and Noid presumably just stands for no ID.
Pretty much, yeah. Took me a while
Yeah.
to learn that actually when I
Which
first
is
got
a-
into plants. I was like, what is everybody on about? I was like, oh, yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's
I
a
always call
mystery in
them-
itself.
Yeah, no ideas.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? There's lots of plants out there. We're still. It is amazing though that we're growing all these plants that are essentially still very, very new to Western botanists. That's a really amazing
It is, but it's
scenario
also
that
a
we have them
little,
in our
you
homes.
have to be so careful about how you get hold of them as well. And that,
Right.
unfortunately, they do get just kind of collected in the wild and shipped off to various places. So you do have to, we try to be very careful about where we get our seeds from and learn about the people that we're buying things from before we do it, because we don't want to encourage destroying the habitat just so I
Absolutely.
can have a pretty plant in my in my house.
Yeah. But presumably also that's a sort of a reason to extend,
Yes.
if you have
Yeah.
got sources of seed, good.
Yeah.
I mean, then you're able to get these plants out to more people, and that way you can spread them without having to take any more from habitat.
Yes, although I'm sure Ash will tell you getting plants out of us is difficult.
But why is that? Why is it difficult? Tell me, because you just want to keep them
Yeah, you
all.
have to be trusted to look after them, basically.
Is it like adopting a dog where you have to do I have to do a
Pretty
full
much.
sort of,
In an
paperwork?
ideal world, I'd come around, check your house, make sure your
Yep.
terrarium is set up nicely, get references from at least 3 people, including one of your junior school teachers, just to be sure. It's not quite that bad, but
They are quite finicky as well. They're not easy plants, right? You don't just stick them in a terrarium and they're going to be great. A lot of them have different soil needs, which is hence why Ash has been experimenting and creating a range of different substrates for the plants that we grow. And they have different light needs as well. They're not all kind of put them in the same terrarium and they'll thrive. They absolutely won't. And that's why it's so important to understand a bit more about where they come from, their lighting, their conditions, and the types of, substrates that they grow in naturally. A lot of them like just leaf litter. Some of them will like more calcium, limestone, rocks, and that's what they grow on. So playing and experimenting is really the only way to work out how to make them happy. And even then, sometimes we still fail. So, and I think that's probably what we both enjoy, isn't it? The challenge of it as well.
It
Yeah.
is, to be honest, that's what I was going to say. It's the
Mm.
appeal of begonias. Partly it's the beauty and the range, because I genuinely don't think that there is a niche in the plant world that you can't find a begonia to fill.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you want. If you want tiny, beautiful leaves, if you want big, flashy ones, if you want vining or trailing, if you want tuberous, there is a begonia that fits whatever you want. And I think that's incredible. Just this one family everywhere doing everything. But the challenge of working out, a lot of the species that we grow are being grown for the first time in the UK or in Europe even. We're the only people growing them, potentially in domestication. So, and it is difficult to get information about, where was it growing originally? Is it growing in a karst region? Is it growing in the understory? Is it high up on cliffs? And that's the kind of information that's going to inform how we plant it. So there is, as Nina says, we've killed our own sheds, working out what it is that they need from us in order to thrive in this sort of indoor ecosystem.
So we've established that we all love begonias, which is great. Well, what we want to get into in this main interview, we're going to go a bit heavier into the begonias in the Extra Leaf podcast for patrons subscribers. But in this main interview, we're going to be talking about terrarium goo, and I just love saying that.
I love
It's just
playing
such
with it. Honestly,
satisfying
it's so much fun.
praise. Yeah, I mean, it's taking me back to the Play-Doh days of my children's upbringing, and indeed my own Play-Doh days, because this is a fun substance. But for those who are uninitiated into terrarium goo, what is it, and why do we love it so much?
Pass over to you.
So,
She just opens them up
I
for
don't
you.
know if I have, because I should have sent it to you before. You can see it's all squishy. It does actually have the texture sort of Play-Doh.
Yeah.
So I'm just scooping some, and if you can see me on video, you can see that I'm giving it a good squidge. It is
It is
squishy and
very
gooey.
squidgy.
It really is.
And you also don't realize
It's
how much
also
she
super
hates doing that
sticky.
right now. She's a gloves girl. She absolutely hates getting her hands dirty.
All right, don't put me in. I am the Duchess of Dirt, likes wearing gloves.
Fair
I
enough.
do. That's why I've got a tea towel handy to clean my hand off. It's basically it's a clay-based substrate that I blend that we use for vertical planting. In a terrarium, one of the major issues that you've got is that you've got a glass jar or a glass tank, and you've got bare sides. And there are options. You can do expanding foam and coco coir. That's kind of the classic. You can do cork panels. You can do coco coir panels that you're gluing on. And for me, the problem with those is that none of them are actually nutritive to the plants. So you've still got to have your stuff starting in the substrate, and then you can pin it onto those backgrounds. It might even latch onto them and pull itself up, but they don't nourish the plant. They don't have any kind of benefit for it. I don't like using stuff like expanding foam, which means I was stuck with flat backgrounds. They're not exciting. They don't interest me. When I'm building a terrarium, what I really want to do is build a little window into the jungle. I don't want expanding foam in my jungle. Thank you. So this was my answer to it. It's a sticky clay. I can stick it up the side of things, and it's nutritious. It's a proper functional substrate that happens to be sticky, which means that I can just plant upwards. My plants, I can stick a cutting into it. It will root into the goo directly. Climbing plants will lock onto it, pull themselves over the surfaces it covers. They can derive fluid fluid. What am I talking about? They can get hydrated from it. They can get their water, but it's also really nutrient rich. So it has vermicast in it, and they're drawing nutrition. They grow faster. They grow more healthily. And to be honest, it looks cool.
And it's fun to play with.
And
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I'm not expecting you to give me your secret recipe, but those are the main components, is some form of clay and a worm cast type element. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there are loads of recipes out there. I'm not the only person that makes a vertical planting substrate. There are some ones that have, and I'm going to be honest here, really weird ingredients. When I was researching and thinking, how do I solve this problem I've got? One of the recipes I read online, I didn't try this one, included ground up cat litter. Um, there are some, yeah, I know. It's because it's an absorbent clay material.
Yeah, it's molar clay,
Mm.
isn't it? If you use the right
Yeah.
one. Just don't want to get that
The
wrong.
texture's not
We could
great
be
though.
putting anything in
Yeah.
there.
I've been through dozens of variations trying to dial it in and get the one that I thought caught the right balance that sticks to everything. I test this by picking up big globby lumps of it when I'm making a new batch and throwing it at stuff to make sure it's sticky. It sticks to basically everything, including hands. It is skin safe. It's non-toxic.
It's easy to wash
But
off as well. It
as
doesn't.
I really wish,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, it
And
is easy
presumably,
to
if
wash
your
off.
terrarium design doesn't quite go according to plan, and you look at it and think, "Oh, I'm not so happy with this," presumably you can then just break it down, take it apart, and redo without much
Yeah,
worry, because it is just a squidgy substance that you can kind of endlessly mold in the way that you want to.
Pretty
exactly
much.
so.
Yeah.
It's the one thing I would say about it is that it needs to be kept in humidity. It's not a product that's going to work if you want it out in the open air, if you want a lot of airflow. Um,
Mhm.
the most airflow exposure that I have used it in, I have an experimental orchidarium that I've been working on and twiddling with since about last November, where I have a wall of goo that's open to the air on both sides. And this particular orchidarium's got forced air from a fan. It's quite an open flowing affair. And there I have a drip wall set up so that I can run water over the goo. So even in that situation, I can keep it hydrated, but I have to have the drip wall on a timer. It would dry out if I just left it, and at that point it would just crumble off. It's not suitable for use in ambient sort of humidity. But yeah, as long as you keep it,
Right, I see.
yeah, keep it humid, and it's pretty much endlessly playable with. I know Nina quite looks forward to an excuse to take hers apart and have another go.
We actually sent some to Spain twice as part of a giveaway, and unfortunately never quite made it. So it went missing for about 4 months, and it came back. And I just added a bit of water to it and used it and built one of my terrariums with it. It was perfectly fine. So it's really good at
And it was
rehydrating
fine, so
itself.
it can dry
Yeah,
out.
absolutely. In the pots, you just
I
add a bit of
see.
water, and
Yeah.
it's perfectly fine to use again.
I mean, can it go wrong in terms of, I mean, is there a point where that you get to the point where you've got too thick a layer
Too
or
thin.
too thin a
Yeah, I've
layer?
done too thin a few times. Particularly with, you can't see them at the minute, but there's some acabars down here. You can probably just about see them. And I've been playing around with the airflow on those because I keep isopods as well, and I like to keep them in my planted terrarium. So the begonias are always the most important thing, but to try and give them both what they needed, I added a mesh layer to the top of the acabar. And the plants were okay in it, but the goo was not coping with the extra airflow. So I've since kind of modified it. So I've now got half and half. So half the plastic cover, half the mesh, and that's working a lot better. So, and the pods should be all right with that as well. I've yet to test it, but yeah, so you do have to kind of tweak it if you want something with a bit more airflow. If you're growing lots of mini orchids, for example, they need a bit more. And it can be done, but some of the, like, growing a Dressela speculina at the moment, which is a tiny mini orchid. I don't know if orchid is about this big. It's so small. But I put it in goo as an experiment to see if it liked it, and it's working. It's growing twice as much as the one I planted in moss. So it's not just the begonias that are enjoying it. We use it for magravia as well. We started experimenting, just putting them straight onto a fern block with goo. They love it. So yeah, there's a wide variety of terrarium plants that you can use it with.
And if you've got sausage fingers like
It's the
me,
best way to do it.
and you're trying
Scoop
to
and slap, honestly.
design something, so I mean,
That's actually
I'm just
better.
worried that I don't have very good design
You don't need
skills,
them. You literally
but I don't really
no,
need them,
you
I
just literally
guess.
scoop a handful out and shove it where you want it. And the thicker and the more in your hand, the better, because then you can push it and just squidge it into the shape that
Mhm.
you want. And it's the easiest way to do it, personally. I've used, pokey things and palette things to shape it if it's a smaller jar, but I do find it's easier to play with and maneuvering it into how you want it if you've got a larger lump of it in the first place to just kind of squidge it about. Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, some of the more like impressive things that I've seen have been people making things like ledges out of it.
Mm.
Someone made an arch, which was so cool. It's not something that would have occurred to me to do.
Mm.
So seeing someone else take
Mm.
my thing and do other stuff with it is always very exciting.
Talk about the wallows.
Recently,
Just thinking about the
so I
wallows.
was just going to
There you
say,
go.
yeah. So what I occasionally do for friends who've got exotic pets is custom substrates. So we'll talk about what the animal's requirements are, their natural habitat, those kind of things. These are for planted vivariums. So the situation where you've got your exotic plants that you've matched to the environment that your pets come from. And we did one for some dart frogs, which was very exciting, particularly because our friend with the dart frogs, they come from the Amazon, where red art clay is commonly used. It's a hematite and iron heavy clay, which isn't what I usually use. But we adapted a goo to use hematite heavy clays, which are lovely red colour, and he used them to sculpt wallows where the frogs can go and have little clay baths. It was really sweet. But it's amazing to see when you match the environment, the animals and the plants in that vivarium are really thriving now. They've created a tiny ecosystem that replicates what they would have in the wild, which is, like we said, that's kind of our goal when we're building a terrarium. That's what we're thinking about. How do we make this like the plant's natural environment?
And it's interesting that you're not only just using it as a sort of sculptural backdrop, but obviously it's a medium in which they can root and grow over and grow into. Does that mean that at some point when you're trying to uh, maybe dismantle something and redo it, that you've got to wash off lots of roots? I mean, can you just wash the roots off if they're covered in the goo? How does that work if you're trying to extricate plants from displays that you've made?
I mean, you could. I don't think I've actually done that yet, to be honest. So I couldn't tell you. But I'd probably just pull it out. I mean, I generally, probably every sort of 3 or 4 months, I end up redoing my acrobats because something dies or something doesn't quite work or something's too big. So I only did mine again, I think, over the Christmas holidays. So they're all kind of thriving in the minute. But I have got a couple, as I say, where the goo was drying out. So I literally just snapped it off, even with the plant inside it. And then I've just put the plant in a plastic tub and just added some water. And I actually haven't actually put anything else in there. I've just left the goo in a bit of water, and the plants are still growing. They're up in my other plant room in the attic. But that's probably the closest I've come to sort of dismantling something with the goo at the minute. But I don't think it'd be too challenging. I don't know about you, Ash.
Okay, so I have, but f- I don't rinse the roots off. I don't think it's necessary. I
No.
just take the whole plant, roots, goo, everything, because I'm going to be sticking it back into another goo situation. Um, as long as the goo's hydrated, you can just scoop, or use a silicone spatula if you're me and don't like getting mud under your fingernails. Um, But yeah, it does root into, or plants root into it. So you certainly could wash the roots off. I'm just not sure why you'd want to.
Yeah.
In the same way that when you repot one of your house plants, you're probably not going to rinse all the substrate off them first. If you've got begonias, please don't do
I
that.
really
It's
hate it.
very bad
Yeah.
for them. Yeah.
They don't like it. Well, I guess, and also with begonias, the great thing is that we know that any little fragment of a leaf or a stem, a piece of, a leafy stem can quite easily be made into another plant, which I guess maybe is one of the problems with begonias in that you eat, I've had plants that have got too big and I've just taken them apart and then I've ended up with 10 plants. Like I've made the problem worse, not
Yeah.
better. Like if I've got, this is grown too big for my space, but now I've got 10 of this begonia, which I guess, is a nice problem to have, but they are just so ready to make new plants, aren't they? On the whole, don't think I've met a begonia that doesn't want to turn into more plants in some way or other. So yeah, they're very generous, I find, and obviously that can then be a source of plants for more terrariums, which is how we all end up with too many plants, I guess. But let's talk about begonias in terrariums. Moving on from the goo, which, as I say, is a wonderfully, literally fertile topic. Say that you can make your own using. As you say, there's lots of recipes around, but you can also buy it from you guys. So if people don't want the hassle of buying individual materials and mixing it together, which I have done in the past, and I can say is really tedious and messy and takes up a lot of space. So I would highly recommend buying it from you two instead. So I'll put the details in the show notes for getting hold of you and your goo, because I'm sure some listeners will want to invest in some. But let's talk about begonias in terrariums. Obviously, we've got an audience who's a range of levels of expertise in this, but obviously you're growing lots of these lovely rare begonias, which haven't been necessarily described to science, but when we're talking about ones that maybe are a bit more widely available and a bit more predictable, where should people start with getting a beautiful gooey terrarium with some nice begonias? What are your recommendations?
I'd always start with some Lichenora because it's just such a versatile plant. So I don't know if you've seen one, I can find you one. I've got it in literally everything I grow, it's in. So let me see. There's some in here. There is. I mean, it's not the biggest one, but this one here.
And what to say the name for me again?
Lichenora.
Lichenora, did you
Yeah,
say?
so it's a tiny, it stays quite small like this, but it crawls and grows. It'll do vertical. It'll do, it'll crawl across the bottom as well. But it's fairly indestructible, I find. And because it's such a good grower as well, you're always going to have lots of it to add to your terrariums. And it's just looks great in every situation. So that one's pretty good. If you want something that's kind of tall and upright, I see if I can find something simple. Actually, you're quite easy. This is actually quite a rare one. Sorry, you're talking to the back of my head now, but this is a Sumatra. So it's got beautiful furry leaves and veining, but although she's quite rare and you can't find her too often, she's becoming a bit more available, and she's quite easy to look after, and she flowers quite readily as well. A lot of my plants, and Ash does the same, will self-pollinate. So with begonias, you always say you want an heir and a spare. So you want at least 3, basically, of each of your plants, particularly if they're your favorite, so you can keep them alive. So those ones are quite easy. A lot of the hybrids are usually a lot easier to look after. So you think of like Darth Vader in area, which you've probably heard of, has recently been remarketed as green spots as a hybrid, tissue cultured and sent around to various garden centres. But it's not actually a true Darth, it's a hybrid. But hybrids are a lot more versatile and a lot easier to look after. They tend to have similar growing habits to the parent plant, but also when you grow begonias, when you hybridize them yourself, you get such a variety. So this one I have is a dark purple color, a lighter green with white spots, or this one you can see is quite pink. So you get a real good range. So, I mean, you're not going to find too many that you know the name of, I guess, for terrarium begonias, Ash, unless you can think of any. I mean, there's Berkili, but they're quite big. You want something quite small and
Berkili's
slow
too
growing.
big for a
Yes, I've got one
terrarium,
over
I
there.
find. That one lives in
Absolutely.
a prop box for me.
Yeah.
So something with the lich, the first one that Nina was talking about, which you didn't mention, but is my favourite part of it, is that in lower lights, a lot of our plants look their best in lower lights, and it takes on this wonderful iridescent, sparkly blue colour. Like, what could be more magical than sparkly blue plants with glittery bits in the leaves? I'm sorry, half of your listeners are just like, please stop talking about the sparkly bits.
No, I'm sure my listeners will totally be in agreement with you on that. That is Well, who doesn't want sparkly blue plants? Indeed.
Exactly. Who doesn't? But I think to add on to what Nina's saying, terrarium begonias are quite difficult to source. There are few growers in the UK. They're sensitive. They're not the kind of plants typically that can easily be imported in bulk and sold on the open market, which is why a lot of the plants we grow aren't sort of present here. It's not that they're not beautiful. In a lot of cases, it's not even that they're super, super, super hard to take care of. It's that they're too sensitive to be imported or sold in very high volume, which is where most of our plants are coming from. As Nina said as well, sort of the tissue culture market, they're not suitable for that very large volume sale. So you are when you're looking for an entry level species, stuff like Lictenora is relatively easy to access. I would say probably things like Begonia Ladies, which is a small vining plant that comes from South America. I think it's Brazilian originally. It's another one that's quite unassuming, nice sort of background detail, but catch it in the right light, and again you get that iridescence. She's got some lovely heart-shaped leaves as well. If you're looking for something that you want a centerpiece for your terrarium, in terms of something that's easy to look after, I would go, as Nina says, for a hybrid if you can find one. The most widely available one is that Darth Green Spots. It does appear to be a lot easier to look after than the true Darth Vaderiana, which I'm just going to
Which I
admit
have
now,
one.
I've melted mine at I've got a couple. They're alive. I have melted at least two.
It is alive, this one.
What is it with begonias? Tell me.
They melt or they ash. So they like to be in high humidity, but sometimes they don't want to be in high humidity. So they melt their leaves and they turn to goo. Or they decide they want a bit of airflow and you give it to them and then they decide to ash their leaves. So this is where they crumble. They don't go all soggy. And Darth Vaderiana is I mean, I know several people who are much more experienced growing begonias have been doing it a lot longer for me, and theirs are all dead too. If you let it flower, it will die. If you let it grow, it will die. These are all props from my original plant, and I'm basically not touching it. I have another one, which I also haven't touched, but she's ashing. So you'll see that the leaves are crumbly. You can see that very well, but they're kind of like crumbly
I guess this
edges.
is why you need to have several plants.
Yes, this is why you have an heir and a spare. Absolutely.
They're not all this bad.
Absolutely.
We're putting people off, Nina.
I know, but this is the intention, was it not?
I was going to say, this is going back to your point about your very careful vetting process before you allow people to buy your plants.
And also, we generally only have one ourselves, right? So we actually haven't got enough to share at this point.
Right. And are you going to markets? Are you going to plant fairs and things to sell as well as selling online now?
In Bristol, didn't we? What was that? 3 weeks ago now, maybe 4 weeks ago. It was the first one we've ever done.
Sounds about right.
And we did really, really well. And we were quite surprised how interested everybody was, to be honest. We've got another one on the 5th of July. We're doing the Birmingham Rare Plant Fair. And that's all we've got in the diary at the moment. We've tried a couple of just kind of local fairs last year just to kind of, put our hands in and see what we needed to learn about setting stalls up and all that kind of stuff. It was kind of interesting, but the kind of market was the wrong one. So it was more outdoor plants and people were interested in making terrariums, and we did well on that side, didn't we, Ash, in terms of people learning what you need and the kind of substrates, etc. But the kind of the entry level plants for most people is your Phoetonias and the things that you generally see in terrariums that you can buy in a supermarket, which is fine, right? Everybody has to learn and kind of play with something somewhere, but we're kind of more at the other end of that scale because of the types of plants that we grow.
If I never see another Phoetonia in a terrarium, I won't.
Honestly,
be too
I absolutely
soon.
hate them. I absolutely hate them.
Say?
No, it's absolutely fine. I hate Phoetonia with a passion.
I used to quite like them, but I feel like they're overexposed now.
Tradescantia and Phoetonia do not come anywhere near me.
Well, yeah, Tradescantia I have my own issues with, but Phoetonias I'm just kind of bored of them in terrariums. I just think they're the number one plant people choose, and I'm not that desperately excited by their
No.
leaves. But as you
Mm.
say,
You got to start somewhere.
the reason why they're so popular is they're widely available. Everyone can get hold of one, and that's where people
Yes.
start, which is great. But I mustn't be too mean to petunias. But you mentioned their
Yes.
substrates. Let's just talk a little bit about that, because obviously I presume you can kind of get very deep into the grass here, and it can get very, very complicated. But
Ash is the
what's the
technical
main
lady.
tenet when you what's the main tenets when you're thinking of maybe a begonia based terrarium, and you're not going for anything too out there? Where do you start with how to make up your substrate?
So for me, it depends. Am I just doing begonias, or am I doing begonias and other plants? So here's one I made earlier.
Yes,
So
there
this
you go.
is one of our substrates. This one is our begonia substrate. This is the one I use if I know the begonia is a bit fussier. And that is based on pumice, akadama, biochar. It's got my beloved vermicast worm castings in there. Can't go wrong with those. It uses cocoa coir. We don't use peat for anything. That's really important to me. I care about the natural environment. So I want to make sure that I'm respecting it with what we make. But this one, what I'm thinking about if I'm using that is consistent moisture. But I'm also thinking about the fact that my begonias are really greedy little girlies. They need, I can see that smile and nod there. Yeah, they're hungry plants. And we're striking that balance between feeding them enough to get them growing and avoiding root burn, which is why
And
akadama is
maintenance
such
as
an
well.
important part. Yeah. Also that, yeah. It makes me sound bad again. It's not all calculated around how can I avoid
I was referring
watering
to myself, not
everything
yourself.
and or feeding. Um, Akadama's really clever because it's got this capacity to store nutrients within the clay. Akadama is a Japanese bonsai substrate. It's clay based again. Not everything I make has clay in it, but a lot of it does. It catches the nutrition when you fertilize with water. It's absorbing those nutrients and slowly releasing them. So through this process of osmosis, diffusion, osmosis is water. It's releasing them slowly to maintain a healthy level in the substrate and prevent root burn, which obviously we're always going to be trying to avoid. So we've got that nutrient aspect to it. At the same time, I'm thinking about consistent moisture. In a terrarium situation, you've got qualities relating to wicking. Wicking is how the substrate absorbs the water from the drainage layer and from the condensation on the walls. If you're not careful, if you've got a badly designed substrate, you're going to end up with puddles. No one wants puddles. No one wants a soggy substrate. What we want is a medium that is going to draw the water evenly across it. And that is going to help us to avoid wet roots. Begonias want consistent moisture, not too much, plenty of oxygen. They're not fussy or anything, just everything exactly so. And that's where I'd start with something that's more demanding. If I've got like a less demanding less demanding plant, then I'm going to start with this one, which is my terrarium substrate. This one also uses akadama for the same reason, but I want to say it's a more complicated mix. I'm not sure that that's necessarily true. This one is based more on a true sort of forest floor situations. There are things like leaf litter in there and orchid bark. They're giving textural variation. It's got sphagnum moss in it, which slightly tweaks the pH balance to more reflect a forest floor situation. Again, looking for that even wicking quality, but a little bit more complexity. They're both bioactive, so they contain fungi. A lot of the time when you buy substrates from us, you do get a free gift in the form of springtails. Because we've got those bioactive substrates, they come sort of pre-prepared to form a sort of virtuous system in your terrarium where you've got microfauna and microflora supporting your main plants that you've intentionally added. Sorry, I've probably talked enough now.
No, that's great. I mean, that's all really useful information to know. And as you say, love a springtail. Nothing wrong with that. Having a great impact on a positive impact on terrariums. Well, that's really all really useful to know. I just maybe should finish by asking you to name your current. I know it's current
Mm.
and maybe it changes on a day by day basis, but what's your current absolute fave begonia that you are totally in love with
You asked
right
first.
now,
I'll go and get
starting
mine.
with
I'll go and
Nina?
get mine.
Okay, Ash is gonna go and get hers. What Ash Nina's gonna go and get hers, sorry. Ash, what's yours?
So it does vary on a day-to-day basis. But typically speaking, I'm a pink girl. It drives Nina mad. She's cannot stand it. I keep sneaking into her house and leaving pink begonias around. Um,
She goes off
but
with a few as
I think
well.
probably I do steal my own, or steal from you, but you get pink ones in return, and I feel
Mm.
like that's a fair exchange, no? Um, I absolutely adore Begonia roseo punctata. Um, just she has everything: pink spots, this elegant upright habit, um, a sort of stunning. Begonias obviously are famous for their angel wing shapes, and punctata doesn't have that. She's got a more sort of curvy, undulating shape to the leaf, and I just adore her. My other favourite one is Begonia SP Lampung. It's an undescribed species, but it's colloquially known as crazy pink. Um, and I just think they're incredibly fun. These really vibrant colours, um, and a sort of elegant fringed shape. They grow forwards, and the leaves overlap one another in a really beautiful way.
Sorry, I'm
Are you
just
still
That sounds lovely.
organising your
well, I'm
more?
just picking all yours up for you. So there's your rosio punctata.
Oh, yeah,
The
look at
lower
that.
leaf is on
Okay,
its way out,
nice.
which is why it's looking a little.
Mhm.
And these are your
Mine's in a big terrarium
crazy
downstairs.
pinks. Well, that's a silver version, which is a morph, and that's the normal pink one. Never a pink. I did quite like the silver morph. I'll give you that. Obviously, I like rosio. I mean, yours came from there, so. And as I mentioned earlier, I like the fluffy cloud begonias, right? So this is a year more, and she is absolutely beautiful.
Oh,
So
wow.
she's actually planted on a piece of wood. She probably doesn't need the Velcro anymore, but there's view all the way up the inside of here so that she can grow more upright because she's got such big probably flouncy leaves. It gives her a bit more room. So she's in quite a tall cloche by herself. I say by herself, she's got some lich, obviously. And this is a SP Japan. Remind me.
It's Piper
Thank
SP
you.
Japan.
So yeah, she is my favorite at the moment. And I've got a few more
Beautiful.
cinnamons growing. Although the trouble, and this is the other challenge with getting seeds for these sorts of species, is they're generally quite old, so the germination rate is quite poor. So you'll only get kind of 2 or 3, and you need to nurse them through to maturity. So nobody else has one of these, and I don't actually have a spare at the minute. So if she dies, you won't ever see me again because I will be miserable.
Well, hopefully I can beg some pictures of those
Absolutely,
plants
of
for the show
course.
notes so people can see them if they've missed the
Yes.
video. But those look incredible, and I mean I can totally imagine that you're going from one plant to another on a daily basis with all those
Do you
wonderful
know you're
plants
not? That's why
around
you
you.
grow them in terrariums. It's so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's been lovely to chat to you
Likewise.
both. Thank you so much for joining me today. And yeah, do go and check out your Nina and Ash's accounts because they're absolutely a box of delights of interesting begonia things. And thank you for your goo tips. And I hope everyone's going to go away and get their hands very gooey and making incredible terrariums with terrarium goo. So thank you so much,
You're
both of
welcome.
you.
Thank you for asking us along.